This is The Camp with Zach Heilprin and the Athletics' Jesse Temple.
Yes, welcome into The Camp. I'm Zach Heilprin, no Jesse Temple today. For those people watching, they obviously can see that. For those listening, you could see it as well. You could go to our YouTube page, and we certainly would appreciate the Camp podcast. Going up there and subscribe. Going to have a ton of content going up there very, very quickly here as we get into fall camp and then into the season. We're going to have from practice, going to have practice highlights, going to have video from player interviews, and then obviously our shows are going to be up there as well. So a lot of good stuff coming, including down to Big Ten Media Days next Wednesday and Thursday. So Jesse, again, will be back with me on Monday. Today's show is another special episode. It's going our second episode in a series of 4 about the 1993 Wisconsin football team. And it's from 4 different perspectives. Yesterday or earlier this week, we heard from Jay Wilson from a media perspective. Today's episode, we're going to be hearing from a coach's perspective, a head coach's perspective. It is former Wisconsin coach Barry Alvarez. I think people are going to really enjoy this one. Ton of great stories from Barry. We spent about 40 minutes talking about that 1994 or 93 team, 94 Rose Bowl. I probably could have spent another hour. He couldn't because he had to deal with me, but it was a really good, fun interview, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. So here he is, former Wisconsin coach Barry Alvarez. Yeah, we do bring in former Wisconsin coach, former Wisconsin athletic director, member of the College Football Hall of Fame. It is Barry Alvarez. Barry, I appreciate your time. This is the 30th anniversary of your first Rose Bowl team, the one in 1993. There's so many stories attached to it, but I wanted to start just with what it was like in 1990 when you showed up. How tough a situation did you walk into in 1990 in Madison?
Well, you could start with the athletic department, which was bankrupt. There really weren't, basketball and football were the money makers, and the stadium's empty. Basketball was bad. I can remember at one point I wanted to get some a different colored practice jersey, a contrasting practice jersey, and rotate them. We didn't have enough money in the budget to get us practice jerseys, so we were on a shoestring budget. Probably a handful of legitimate Big Ten players on the team, a few really good players. And I thought our offensive line, they had good size. Had we coached that group for 4 years, I think they could have been a good offensive line. But, there was an attitude. I don't think they felt as though they could compete in the Big Ten. And not a lot of confidence. Very, very thin at the skilled positions, quarterback and running back in particular. So it was a program that had to start from scratch.
So part of that was, and it's obviously the famous line at the press conference about if you don't have your you better get your season tickets now because before long you won't be able to. There's that one. But I was reading about some other stories of things that you ran into. And I don't know if you remember this one or not, but there was a Lumbermen's Association meeting. You heard a guy say that he wasn't going to renew his season tickets. He wanted to see if you guys were going to be any good. And according to the article I read, you took issue with it and you confronted him with it. And I don't know. Do you remember that one at all? It was from Gene Wojciechowski, the LA Times. It was a long time ago. I know. But here's the quote that he attributed to you. Said, the high volume lecture ended with a quote, "And I hope that when you do want to come back, that you can't get season tickets." Did you run into a lot? Did you run into a lot of that?
Yeah. You know what? I ran into about everything. I can remember doing the circuit and we do our spring with the athletic department. We do our spring meetings and around the state and go to alumni groups. And I got to the point I didn't want to go and listen to people talk about the band or other teams. I'm the football coach. I wanted to talk about football. A lot of people weren't real excited about it. And I can remember one year, I think it's probably the year of the first Rose Bowl, I get all the way to the last meeting. I said, my goal was to get through the circuit without somebody asking a band question. And one of our good supporters, Jerry Fluto, it was in the crowd, and he comes out and asks something about the band, and I got after it pretty good. I said, I almost made it through the entire banquet circuit without anybody asking the band, and Fluno had to blow it for us.
There was another one after the first Cal game. You said your eyes were like open. The first game against Cal, your eyes were open like this when you came out and saw the crowd. You could have shot a cannon off and hit nobody.
Yeah,
it was just
there wasn't a lot of excitement. I mean, I look back at there's a picture. One of the coaches had it in their office it was the last game of the season before we came in here. In an actual picture, they list the crowd at I forget what the price, 17,000, but there weren't 5,000 people in the stands. It was worse. It looked like a bad turnout for a spring game. It was just not good. There was no interest because the teams weren't competitive.
So you go 1-10 that first year. I'm sure that was obviously really difficult, but you made strides the next 2 years, right? You go 5-6 and 5-6, and that Northwestern loss at the end of 1992. You're so close to a bowl game, right? Come up just short. You held the team banquet a few days later. You could have been feeling sorry for yourself. You probably could have been feeling the team could have been feeling sorry for itself. I understand that you kind of set the tone for the offseason, though, with what was described later as a fire and brimstone speech at that banquet.
Yeah, I remember that. I wanted to send a message to our team that we were right there. We had it. The games, the 2 year, that year and the year before, and even the year before that, we lost a lot of games by 2-3 points. Games that we could have won. Had we had those players in our program all the way through, and they learned how to win and knew how to win, and were confident they could win, we'd have won another handful of games, and we'd have had winning records those years. So it was just a matter of getting over the hump and believing that they're going to win. And I wanted to send a strong message to the team that for the out of season workout and going into the next season, that we're a good football team. We had a lot of good football players. They were very young, but now there is no excuse for being young anymore. These guys played when a lot of them had to play as freshmen and sophomores, some of them before they were ready, but now they're ready, and we're going to be a good football team. And I couldn't wait to get started working with that team and preparing them for the next year.
I think I've heard you talk about it. You went position by position, right? Against some of the other Big Ten teams, and you felt pretty good going into that '93 season based on that.
Yeah, I used to take time before our evening meetings. We'd practice in the morning, and we'd have our dinner, and then we'd start with my meeting, and I'd try to send a different message, try to teach football, teach the game, but also have some type of message. And I went through our position by position comparative to the league, where we were comparable or better at every position, that there's no reason why that we couldn't have a great year.
And yet you went into that season, I think there were, based on my research, maybe 6 teams were thought better than you guys going into that year. Michigan was supposed to be the favorite. Ohio State was up there, Penn State, Illinois, Iowa. There were some teams, thought to be better than you guys, but there were several players on that team that had some standout play prior to that year. A guy like Lamarck Shackelford, right? He was one of the best in '92 going into that year. You had a guy like Scott Nelson, who was a veteran. Joe Panos was there. Leading into the '93 season, you also had Darrell Bevel back for a second season. And I know that there's a big jump. I believe you said this, for a guy that comes back from his Mormon mission, from his first year to his second year. And you guys got that out of Darrell Bevel. And then you had Brent Moss and Terrell Fletcher. And there was just so many different guys that you could point to. And I wonder, going into that season, did you look at those guys the same way as you did going out of the season, or did they show you something different?
I thought they were highly recruited. You throw Lee DeRamus in there. Lee DeRamus, had he not been injured, would have been a first-round draft pick. I know the Packers had told me that they would take him in the first round had he been healthy. Moss and Fletcher was good tandem as you're going to find. They complemented one another. Darrell was a guy that could get the ball to the right spot. Mike Rohn was really a solid tight end. You go right down the line now, and our line was always going to be good. I mean, at that point, now those guys had to play early, but they were solid players. So you go right down the line. We're a good football team. We had weapons everywhere. We had good receivers, good tight end, two running backs that could change up. Montgomery was a solid, fullback that could catch the ball out of the backfield. So we're a good team. And they had experience. They didn't have success as early players, but we had experience, and they weren't. These guys aren't going to be in awe of taking the field against anyone now.
So you guys open the season against Nevada, and you blow them out, right? Then you go down to Dallas, and what was a very small stadium, and a team that was coming off of the death penalty. And when you look at that game, everybody I've talked to, it's pointed that game as a turning point because you didn't play well in the first half. You're down at half, you come back, you win it 24-16. What stands out about that for you as a coach? What some of the changes that made, or maybe something that was said at half?
Yeah, I don't know what was said at half, but I know this. My teams have for a while, until I really did a lot of research on it, that struggled playing at night.
Okay.
And it was a bad atmosphere. It kind of reminded me of like a Northwestern. It was like playing in a high school stadium.
Yeah. You
had to walk from the locker room. It was like, it was like in a basement, like you would be in a high school, walk across the field, walk across the street. I mean, literally they had to stop cars, let us walk across to the stadium. It was a bush league situation, and it was hot. We hadn't had any success on the road. And I can remember coming back at halftime. We're down, and one of our fans is beating me up. He's wearing me out about this team just came off the death penalty. I said, hell, I feel like we came off the death penalty too. But our guys rallied. We played well in the second half and won that game. And I really did. I think that was a turning point, gave us confidence we can win on the road. We really revamped how we played at night after that, researched it and then started having success playing at night. But I agree with whoever said it was a turning point. I think that gave us a lot of confidence to win on the road and feel good. That's a long flight back. You get back at 5 a.m, but you feel good the next day when you get back to practice and get ready to go.
So you would go on and you would start 6-0, and then you would go to Minneapolis to face Minnesota, and it was a tough game. It was a close game. Probably not your best. When I was talking with some of the other people, have actually mentioned the suspension of Bill Callahan as being rather significant in that game.
Yeah, but more than not having Billy there, it was the distraction during the week of what's going to happen. And I made a mistake there. I could have paid. School could have paid a fine, and it was a bogus deal anyhow. Billy was scouting the week before, whenever we had an open date, and I sent him to scout. And as he was walking by their booth after the game, they had their depth chart up on the thing. He grabbed the depth chart, which means nothing. Now I can go to the newspaper and get a depth chart.
Right.
But he makes a big fuss, and he goes to the league, and Commissioner Delaney laid it out. I should have appealed it or paid the damn fine, one way or the other. But it was a distraction during the week. The reason we lost the game, if you look at the stats, we put up ridiculous numbers, but we turned it over 6 or 7 times. I think Bev threw a number of picks.
5.
That had nothing to do with Billy.
Right.
So you have 5 picks in the game. That's the reason we lost the game. We turned it over too often.
Pretty remarkable. He actually still owns the single season or single game passing record from that game as well. I think it was like 423 yards or something like that. That wasn't you guys. Like, it's not saying that you can't throw the ball. You had Doremus, you had Dawkins, you had Roan, but that's not who you guys were.
No, that's not how we played, but we got way behind and had to start throwing.
Yeah. So the next week is the biggest home game in how long? And you're coming off that game, and there were probably some national people. I think there were a ton of national people that were going to be there. leading into that game. I know that they had requested credentials and all that stuff, and then you guys lose, and Michigan's 4-3, and it kind of lost some luster, but it didn't lose luster within Wisconsin's, the fans and everything like that. It was still such a huge game. How did you regroup? Was it just easy because it was Michigan and, Michigan?
Yeah. Yeah. Just the name Michigan. They're always the team that you have to beat. I said that when I took the job when I talked to staff and play, you got to beat Michigan and Ohio State if you win a Big Ten. So that was those games were important for us, and you're playing back at home, and I still felt we had a very good football team. So you want to go out and give them your best shot, and I feel like I was confident we had a good game plan and we could compete with them very well.
You beat them 13-10 on the back of just a marvelous performance defensively. Ton of sacks. You get a late 4th down stop to get the ball back and be able to grind it out. Just from your perspective, was that game exactly who you were as a team and you as a coach? Like, that's the perfect thing? Was that the perfect outcome and the perfect way to beat Michigan?
Well, any way that you beat Michigan is the perfect way. But that was my brand of football. We're going to run the ball. We're going to possess the ball, play good field position, not beat ourselves, not have a bunch of mistakes or penalties, and play field position, play the odds, and that's how it played out. That's how the game played out.
And Rick Schnetschke, right? Just the out of nowhere type of thing. Did you really not know his last name?
I didn't know. I think we were talking, I think, I forget who the broadcasters were. I think Brad Nessler.
Yeah.
And I've got this little kicker. He came in this week. He's kicking the ball, kicking it pretty good. I don't know his name, but he's going to win the game for us.
And it proved to be the case. I mean, you guys win 13-10, and all of a sudden back in the conversation to go to the road. But you welcome in Ohio State the next week. I actually, before we do that, the end of the Michigan game, the crush, the fans, your players obviously played such a huge role in getting some of those people out of there and into medical care. Is that scene just one of the more surreal that you've been around as a head coach?
I'll tell you, of course, I ran off the field. I was in the locker room, and then I'm waiting for the team to come down to address them. And guys are coming down. They're crying. They're broken. I mean, they're broken down. I'm thinking, we won the game, but I mean, you don't have to be this emotional. And some of them shared with me, we got people that might be some students up there that might not be alive. And so I ran up the tunnel, and you walked outside. It looked like, you have people laying around, and it was scary, the sight that you saw, and it was very difficult emotionally for our players. You just won a game, you're sky high, and the next thing you know, you're pulling a student, one of your classmates, out of the bottom of a pile and they're blue because they've been the compression on them from the other bodies, and it was. I tell you what, it took your breath away, and we really had to approach that and deal with that. Our guys were emotionally zapped. They're crying. They were a mess.
How did you deal with it, especially with Ohio State coming in the next week?
Yeah, the thing. And first of all, you have the elation of winning a game, and your the emotions of your players and even your coaches are all over the place. I mean, you had everything. You had a roller coaster ride, and so I spent some time, with our coaches about, guys, this week is just got to be real low key with our players. I mean, these guys are zapped emotionally, and let's just be very. We're fortunate the next day, we got word from the hospital that they had some broken bones, arms, et cetera, and people injured, but no one was going to lose their life, which was a relief. And just be very low key with your players. And then, they'll figure it out by the end of the week that we'll be ready to play against Ohio State, but we can't like you normally would during a week of an Ohio State game or a Michigan game. Go out there and be all, fire and brimstone all week and have them cranked up, because these guys are sapped emotionally right now. Let's just get a game plan in. And that's the approach that I took.
So you had somebody come in and speak to them before the game, right? You had Rudy come in, which that movie came out right around the same time, right? I thought it was 92, 93.
Yeah. And I used to take the team to a movie on Friday nights. And I asked what they wanted to see. They said, oh, there's this movie, Rudy. I said, yeah. I said, you know what? I know Rudy. They said, no, get the hell out of here, coach. I said, oh, I know Rudy. I said, as a matter of fact, I'm going to get him to the game. I'll bring him to the game. And so I called him, and I knew Rudy pretty well in South Bend. He said, oh, I'd love to. So yeah, we brought him to the game. I told him, I'm going to have him talk to you Friday night. Get out, coach. I couldn't believe it. So I bring his little Rudy, comes strutting in there and talked to him Friday night, was on the sideline during the game. Yeah, it made the guys feel special. That's all I was trying to do. Yeah. Let them feel, this is the hottest movie going, and he's going to be on our sidelines. This is a neat deal. You're special.
Yeah, for sure. And the game itself, it was a fun game back and forth. And I remember walking into the stadium that day and walking up the tunnel and seeing the full student section before. I mean, they came out, I think, in recognition of what happened the previous week. They got there and they were there an hour before the game. And we know what Wisconsin fans are like. They're going to enjoy themselves before they get into the stadium. But that wasn't the case for that one. They were there right away. But the game itself, back and forth, 14-14. Joey Galloway, obviously makes the touchdown or catches the touchdown to tie the game. You guys go back down the field, have a chance to win it, and the kick gets blocked. Your emotions right in that minute.
Well, it was as we're marching down the field, we're going to win the game. I felt that we had outplayed it. And there's a funny story. John Cooper told me this years later. He said they run an out cut. This is on their last, just before Joey Galloway scored. They run an out cut to Joey Galloway, who might be the fastest guy in the Big Ten. For sure, he said he's the fastest guy on our football team and track team. And you've got a receiver out there covering him. They throw a 10-yard out, and he's all over it. And I look, and your corner has a knee brace on. There is no damn way that he can cover Joey Galloway. So I called timeout. I ran two tight ends. I said, Joey, just run right by him. Just run a streak. She said, so I actually drew that play up in the dirt after I saw a guy covering him with a knee brace on, and you're playing man coverage. There's no way that's going to happen.
It was a great game, and obviously you wish you could have finished it. But yeah. The next week, Ohio State goes to Michigan and loses, and you guys are off the next week, and then you go to Michigan State. So when Ohio State loses to Michigan, it puts everything back in your own hands, right? It puts it, if we beat Michigan State, we're going to be in the Rose Bowl. You did a lot of things to get ready for that trip to Tokyo, and I know this story, but when did you know that you're going to be going to Tokyo for that game? And was it a result of not going to bowl games was kind of going to be like something like a bit of a present for your team?
Yeah, I wanted to reward the guys that had been in the program. I know Kansas State had done that before. I think Nebraska went. So they were taking two teams every year, and no one wants to give up a home game. And the promoters approached me, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys, particularly our seniors, they've really worked hard. We narrowly missed the bowl. Should have been in a bowl 2 previous years, and I'd really like to do something special for them. And Pat Richter was good enough to say, that he would go along with it. We're going to get some grief from the local merchants and that type thing, but what an experience for our players. And so that's how it came about.
So you did a lot of unique things to get ready for that trip, though. Obviously the sunglasses, and was there anything that you look back on and was like, yeah, that played a huge factor Was there, I mean, or did all those things be like, we were going to get there, we are going to beat them anyways?
Yeah, we were going to do that anyhow. But, you know, every game I try to give something to our players that we have an advantage. I always look for an advantage. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's made up. I'm going to let them know they have an advantage over their opponent. And in this case, you know, I got the information about turning your body clock back from astronauts, and it all had to do with the light and dark, and sleeping. So we took basically 2 hours a day off and moved our body clocks back, so that when we got to Tokyo, we were on their time, and it wouldn't take you 2 or 3 days to get back to feeling normal. And so, you know, that had to do, that was assigned to everybody, gave everybody a pair of sunglasses, and we cut, you know, the first day, it's the last 2 hours of the day, we had it all worked out for them. When you wear the sunglasses, when you go to bed, you know, you keep staying up later, you go wear the sunglasses 2 hours, then 4 hours, then 6 hours. And then when we get there, you know, it's a 12 or 14-hour flight, whatever it was. Don't sleep on the plane. And when you get there, you'll be right on Tokyo time. We get up the next day and we go right to practice, and your body will be right on their time. So that gives you an advantage. And especially when they look around the plane, they see Michigan State guys sprawled all over the place sleeping. That, you know, our guys are giggling and laughing. You know, they've got an advantage.
They did. They beat them. It was 42-20. You won
We
that game.
didn't
Do you
punt
remember
in
how?
that game.
What was that?
We did not punt in that game.
That's domination.
It was dominant. It was a dominant game.
Yeah. Do you remember how you celebrated out over there, if at all? I assume you did.
We just went back to my room.
Okay.
We had the coaches, and then I had some Ted Kellner and some very close friends were there. We just went back to the room and celebrated. You know, can't believe it. We're going to the Rose Bowl, you know, and how many times that was said that night, I don't know, but it was pretty special.
So you guys get back to Madison, and this is so much different than it is now, right? Like, you guys flew into Chicago and drove back up.
Right.
And you drove right onto the field at Camp Randall, and there was about, I think, like 9,000, 10,000 people in the stands. It was cold. And you delivered this quote, this football team would not be denied. They wanted to go to the Rose Bowl, and this football team will represent you well. I do know this. Pasadena and California will not be the same after Wisconsin gets through with them. And that proved to be the case. I mean, it was essentially last person out of Wisconsin turned the lights out. I think that was, the TV made mention of that with how many people were in California that week. Outside of the game, do you have a favorite moment or story from that week in California?
You know, having played there, I was at Iowa 2 years. 2 times we played in the Rose Bowl, and did a terrible job in our preparation and practice and entertainment. So I really had a good plan, and had a good idea of how to treat the week, what to allow our players to do. I wanted them to experience Pasadena experience. Back then, they really had some very nice functions for the players. I wanted them to do everything and experience everything. And I let them go. I didn't have curfew early in the week, and then, you know, that's the way I would treat it, and let them have fun. We'd practice later. When I was at Iowa, we'd practice. We'd get them up at 7 in the morning, 6:30, have a big breakfast and meetings, and then go to practice at 1 or whatever, 11 o'clock, whatever time. But we were grinding our players, and so I let them run early in that week. No curfew, sleep late, practice in the afternoon at the same time we would be practicing here. So I let them have some fun. I had the game plan in before we went, so it's just repetition on your game plan. So, and everything just, we had it planned out, well enough that, and we had no glitches. It was just the preparation. And even though it was our first bowl game and the magnitude of being the Rose Bowl, a lot of people go in the Rose Bowl. And I sensed it my first time there at Iowa. And when we walk out on that field, it'll take your breath away. It's so pretty. And you got to get your guys out there a day or two beforehand to let them see the field and get a feel of the stadium. All those things, little things that many coaches wouldn't take into consideration, we did, so our guys were totally prepared when they hit the field.
When you did hit the field that day, as I mentioned before, there was a lot of Wisconsin people there. And I know in your message to your guys, you knew it was going to be like that. But you mentioned seeing the field for the first time, it taking your breath away. Did it also kind of take your breath away when you walked in there and it was 70-30, maybe even 75-25 Wisconsin fans?
Yeah, and I told the players, I said, this is like playing the home game. This is Camp Randall West. Now, I'm serious. When you go out there, this stadium's going to be red, just like Camp Randall. Their student section had red in it. You go back and look at that picture of the aerial of the stadium. Their students were scalping their tickets, and I used that. They provide a driver for you. My driver was a junior at UCLA, and the year before was his class president. And he said to me, "Coach, do you realize what's going on?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "Well, our people aren't very loyal. And the tickets they're really hard to get. They're hard to come by. Our people will scalp their tickets, and the Wisconsin people are going to snap them up. That stadium's going to be all red." So I never thought of that. He put it in my head. That's why I knew it would be that way. And even their student section, their card section it was red all through the card section where our people snapped those tickets up.
It was a remarkable thing. And I was there as a kid, and walking through that tunnel and seeing it and being a part of it is one of those memories you won't forget. Right. So the Rose Bowl in general, when we went back, and when I was covering it in 2019, I went back and sat in the seat that I was at as a kid. And it just brings back so many memories. And there are so many memories from that game. And I wrote down a few of them, but one that really stood out, and I think I don't know if it changed the game, but it certainly played a huge factor. And that was the fight in the third quarter. First of all, Donnie Edwards was offsides. Donnie Edwards was so far offsides that and he's the one that makes the play, stops Brent Moss
on the other side. Yeah.
Wasn't even close. He was way offsides. I think you threw your gum. You saw that and threw your gum out. But the fight, Marvin Goodwin, Lee DeRamus, Mark Montgomery, you lose DeRamus and Montgomery. And I mean, you guys were controlling that game on both sides of the ball, and you lost that, and it kind of opened up the door a little bit.
We were going to put the game away right there. It was 4th and 1. Could have kicked the field goal. We'd already missed the field goal, if I remember right. And I'm figuring we get a first down there, we're going to knock another one in there, and they're about ready to fold their tent. So I was trying to put the game away, and I saw Donnie Edwards a step and a half offside, and makes the tackle because he gets I think it was Brett from behind.
Yep.
And stops us, and then the fight breaks out. I was out on the field complaining about I'm looking for the flag.
Right.
We break the fight up. And I said, okay, when do we get the yardage marked off for offside? That's why I got into it with the officials. I wasn't real happy with a couple of the officials. I had a background on one of them. He officiated midget football a year or two earlier in Omaha. So I knew that game was way too big for him, but I wasn't happy with it because we should have put that game away right there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you lose your lead blocker, you lose your best wide receiver, and obviously JJ Stokes was fantastic. But for you, what is the most unlikeliest play you've seen as a coach, and why is it Darrell Bevel's 21-yard touchdown run?
Well, I don't think Daryl flushed all year. You know, he can't break 5-5. You know, he can't.
Yeah.
He knows how to distribute the ball. He's really a smart player, but he can't run fast, and never pulled the ball down once his whole tenure. And to see all of a sudden out of nowhere that we're going to get, you know, we're going to get a play like that out of Daryl running the ball. That's a good omen, man. That's a good sign.
So you get that play out of him, and you know everything is going your way there in the fourth quarter, and yet you can't necessarily finish it off. And I think again, Mark Montgomery, Leader Amos are there. Maybe you're able to finish it off, and they never get the ball back, but they do get the ball back, and they're going down. And you guys, I don't know what you would say about your defense, but I think a lot of people called it bend but don't break. I don't know if that's an insult, but
no, that's not an insult at all.
Right. Okay.
That's what it was.
All right. So you guys had forced 6 turnovers that day. I mean, they were so loose with it, and you guys took advantage of it a ton of times. But they're marching down that field, and I'm sure in that moment you're just like, just make a play. Anybody, just make a play.
Yeah. Well, they're really, I'm telling you, they're a very talented team. And they know where to go with the ball. They're really a good 2-minute drill team, 2-minute offense team. And but we weren't the type of defense where we could play press man. We're a zone team. Our guys weren't skilled enough to go up and press somebody and play man and heat the quarterback up. We could blitz and heat them up, and we changed that up a few times and sent people. But you do too much of that, you're going to get burned eventually. So we just had to be smart, let them come in chunks, and sooner or later you're going to get a play.
And that's exactly what happened. You know, Wayne Cook, what is it? Thank you, Wayne Cook. The
greatest run I ever saw.
Did you know as soon as he ran and he got down, it's like
Game's
3, 2,
over.
1. Yeah.
Game's over. Just can't stop the clock.
Were you like looking at the clock, looking at the field, looking at the clock, or is it just you can hear it because 3?
As soon as he pulled that ball down, I knew the game was over.
He goes down. The celebration starts. I think you got Jim Huber first, and then probably went off after that. But when you were, can you imagine? Can you describe the emotions in that moment? I mean, or is it just had it still not hit you that you went from what you started with in 1990 to January 1, 1994, winner of the most important game a Big Ten team can win in that moment?
Yeah, you don't think of it that way. You know, you put so much into it. You understand the magnitude of the game. It's on national TV. It's being watched by everyone. You're a big underdog going in, and the guys play like they had all year, you know, and played well enough to win that game. I mean, that's as good as it gets in this business. You know, that your guys perform well. They're not intimidated. They're not overwhelmed by the surroundings or anything else, and they play well enough to win. That's hard for a team, first time there, first bowl game, all those things. Yet that's how resilient this group was.
Everyone has a Rose Bowl story, I assume. For people of a certain age, that year and the game itself was one of those moments you're never going to forget. Do you still get people coming up to you and telling you their 94 Rose Bowl stories at times?
Every place I go.
Every place
I go, we've got another couple that we go to supper clubs. We'll pick supper clubs around the state and go and just enjoy it. And I'll go in invariably. There are people I don't know, but they want to come up and tell me the Rose Bowl story.
I mean, again, I think just shows you the impact the team made itself, right? I mean, the starving for success, the starving for wins, the starving for Big Ten titles had been so long that it just sticks with people. Again, I was 12 years old and I can remember almost everything from that year without having to look it up. So I think you've said that winning that first Rose Bowl and turning the program was special, but that you were more proud of the ability to sustain that success. which is obviously harder, right? Sustaining success for a long period of
Oh,
time. And
both.
now,
They're both hard. It's hard to win at that level, and then and I could have done a better job. I thought that's one thing I didn't think I did a great job of. Now we've sustained success and have kept winning and going to bowl games since then. But I thought I could have done it better. If I don't think I did a great job of keeping our guys hungry for that next year. And we had some issues that I think some of the guys celebrated that Rose Bowl victory much longer than they should have, and should have been hungrier for that next year to do the same thing, because we had basically the same team back. So, but still, it's a great accomplishment, but it's really hard to sustain also.
yeah. So, and that's what I was going to ask. I mean, sustaining the success and starting off the 30 years, the golden era of Wisconsin football, I think you could certainly say this last 30 years has been. But what do you think the legacy of that 93 team is at Wisconsin?
I think that's the legacy is it allowed Wisconsin football to understand they could win, they could be successful, because we had gone so long, only a handful of bowl games in the history of the school, and there's one bowl victory, a game in Shreveport, and you played in a few Rose Bowls that certainly didn't win any of those. So to go to the highest level and win and start a string of success in a program, that's where that team and that game started the future of what we're into right now.
It definitely is. And it's prior to this game, you could say the 1963 Rose Bowl was the biggest game in school history, and it was a loss. And I think what this win and that season did is it gave someone for Wisconsin people to hang their hat on and be like, this is who we are.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I heard a lot about that 63 Rose Bowl, and it was a great team, and probably maybe the best Rose Bowl game ever played. It was a great game. I remember watching that game, but we still lost. But that's where the program was. You hadn't been back to a Rose Bowl. Certainly didn't play that well, and didn't have a lot of success after that. And so to come back and go to the Rose Bowl, win, and then move forward, this set the stage for the future football programs here.
It was a special team and a special year, and one that won't certainly be forgotten by anybody of a certain age. And I am of that age, so it's all good. Barry, really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for coming on and sharing some stories with me.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
All right, there he was, former Wisconsin coach Barry Alvarez. What an awesome interview, all because of him and all the stories that he told. It has nothing to do with me. I thought the interview was awesome because of him, in spite of me. But he was great, and certainly do appreciate it. We've got 2 more interviews in this series coming up. Going to have Steve Malchow, who's the sports information director that year for the Badgers, and then also former Wisconsin linebacker Chris Hine, who played an important role on the defense for the Badgers that season. That's coming up here over the next week. So until then, you've been listening to The Camp